ジョージョーの野郎。鬼姫が完全にぶっ潰しやがって。
Oh my god. Hello everyone, welcome to Joe Consumes Cinema. I'm your host, Double Knockdown, and today we have Ashita no Joe, episode 15. So I have to say that the way that fight was set up, was absolutely brilliant. Joe adds the right straight to, his repertoire, but the problem is, he practiced on all those inmates, and so Rikishi was able to plan ahead. He was working on a punch of his own to counter, Joe's right straight, and, once Dangpei realized that Joe had given away his hand, he knew what, Joe was going to be in store for. So he yelled out to the referee to, try and change the rules to give Joe, some chance of actually beating him. Knowing that Rikishi was going to be able to knock him down, multiple times, and Joe would have to basically endure hell to actually get the win here, Dangpei appealed, and, fortunately, the ref did change the rules, allowed, infinite knockdowns as long as Joe can get back to his feet within the 10-second count. And so despite the fact that Rikishi was, destroying Joe, knocked him down like 8 or 9 times throughout the fight, Joe kept getting back to his feet, so, he always had that chance to land that punch. The big problem was he didn't know how to set it up properly until, the very end when he finally landed it. Cleaned Rikishi's clock, but at the same time got hit himself, and that's what resulted in the double knockdown. Now, it's possible for both fighters to be counted out evenly without, either of them rising, and then I'm pretty sure it's a draw at that point. And then the case becomes, are they going to do a rematch, or is kind of setting up the rivalry, and then, maybe they go their separate ways for a while, and then, we get a big fight, maybe towards the end of the series, where, Rikishi comes back a boxer once more, very professional. Maybe they challenge for the title or something like that. I don't know. There's also a small chance that Joe, beats the 10 count and gets back to his feet and gets the win, which I think is highly unlikely given the fact that this is like his 10th down. But you never know. Joe does have a lot of heart. He's proved that, in this fight and also other places too. But yeah, honestly, I just want to find out what happens, so let's get right to it. But before we begin, as always, remember to blank, blank, and blank. Still very much a small channel, so every like, comment, share, subscribe that we can get really helps out. I really appreciate it. Patreon link down below. With that, let's get right to it.
バッグに顔めがけ叩け叩け叩けおいらにゃ獣のだけどリリリリ明日はきっと明日はどっちだ
White Matt's Lullaby.
やりおったぞ
よしね。カウントなんぞ数えたって無駄だっちゅうことはわからんのか。10秒はおろか30分。いや、1時間経ったって2人は立ちゃしねえんだよ。てめえ、リキさんに、それともてめえ、リングの下から魔術でも使ったのか。確かに魔術には違えねえ。おめえたちにとっちゃな。お前さん方、関光則とファイティング原田を知ってる。
Fighting Harada, dude.
関と原田といや、かつての日本ボクシング界のエースじゃねえかよ。
その2人をわずか一撃で倒した男がいたんだ。その男はな、ロープギアの魔術師とも恐れられたメキシコの強豪メデル選手だ。メデルの魔の一撃が爆発した。そのただの一発でコンコンとマットに眠ったんだ。ジョーもそれをやったのさ。剣闘最高の技術、クロスカウンターをな。
クロスカウンター？
ただでさえカウンターパンチは相手の勢いづいた出鼻を打つだけに、相手の突進力プラス自分のパンチ力で威力を倍増させる。ましてやクロスさせた場合は相手の腕の上を交差した自分の腕が滑り、必然的にテコの作用を果たして3倍、いや4倍、思うだに身の毛もよだつ威力を生み出す。
Cool little history lesson.
もっとジョーの場合は偶然の怪我の巧妙なんじゃ。何もかもな。ジョー、お前が力士に勝てる方法はただ一つだ。 私は体でジョーにクロスカウンターを教えた。その一瞬に全てをかけ、そしてわしとジョーは勝ったんだよ。勝ったと言わせてもろうても差し支えあるわい。まるっきりの素人がプロの大型新人と引き分けたんだからな。
Yeah, that's a win in and of itself.
生きとってよかったとしみじみ思っとるぞ。なあ、わしのジョーよ。
なんだ、一体どうしたんだ。
俺たちの負けなんだってば。あいつ、僕にもやらせてくれ。
おとなしく突っ込んでろい。
何、僕だってやれるさ。グローブ貸してくれよ。
Jesus.
わいはみんな穴になる気持ちようわかるような気します。感動してまんねん、あいつら。
感動？
何度ダウンしても立ち上がった血みどろのジョーの姿、男と男の戦いに、しぶきに染まった激烈なクロスカウンターに、みんな胸を打たれてしもうたんや。ボクシングは腕力だけと違う。自分らだってやる気になればやれるんだというどえらい男の本能みたいなもんがみんなをあそこまで駆り立てているんやと思います。わいもやるで。これから対抗試合を始める。
それよりあの小さい方は青山じゃないか。
Oh, God.
青山、やめるんなら今のうちだぞ。死んでも責任は取らねえぞ。あの小さな青山君の心にも火がついたんだ。燃え上がる若い熱気を鎮めることばかり考えてねえで、その燃える炎を見てやろうじゃありませんか。
I like this.
青山、どうせやられるならかっこよく倒れんだぞ。
1秒がこのひょうたん野郎を叩きのめすための時間だ。
おい青山、音が塔になってるよって打ってもいいんやって。
おい青山、今まで俺に何度殴られて泣いたっけかな。
Oh, shit. Nice.
ダウンした。おいらのパンチ食って。
ワンツー。おいやらい、1秒ダウンの約束はどうして。自分が1秒でダウンすることだったのかい。ころやろこの野郎。待て野郎。来たるぞこの野郎。青山を振りになるとゴング鳴らしやがって。
青の昔ボクシングにはルールちゅうもんがあるんやで。よし休みや青山。
どうしたおなり。さっきの勢いはどこ行ったんだよ。
こいつ逃げ出した卑怯だぞ。待て。
逃げてるんじゃない。矢吹さんの真似をして最初はかわしておくんです。
生意気抜かしやがってこの野郎。
大きなグローブがカバーしてくれてるんでほとんど効かないや。
He's winded.
くらえ。
クロスカウンター。
That's awesome.
矢吹さんのクロスカウンターとまではいかないけど、まずカウンターの原理にはかなってたらしいです。
こんな綿入りのグローブなんかはめてるからいくら打ったって効かねえんだ。
Oh, shit.
またんかい。お前も喧嘩と剣闘白地合いとるな。
これやろ。
ボクシングやる習慣ねえよ。
おいバカ、そんな俺はただ実力ではあんな野郎には負けをする。負けだ。
This is good. They're kind of policing their own. You know, this guy took off the gloves trying to cheat, so get him the hell out of there. He lost.
青山の勝ち。
ああいいぞ青山。
Oh, Rikishi's awake. Joe's still out. Oh, there we go.
力士か。ジョー、よくやったな。負けたぜ。
内の秩序を守らなかったためにここへ送られてきた収容生たちの間に誰に押し付けられたのでもない自主的な秩序が初めて生まれたんです。
明日を目指して立つんだぞ。
Okay, took some time just to gather my thoughts. Great episode. Direct aftermath of the fight, Dangpei literally interrupts the count, as the two of them are being counted out. And he says, don't even bother. You could count, for 30 minutes, probably even an hour before these guys will wake up. Dangpei explained to everyone there exactly what happened. So he based his strategy entirely on an experience that a couple of famous Japanese boxers had with the Mexican champion at the time. I'm not familiar with the Mexican champion that apparently knocked both of them out with the cross counter, but I do know fighting Harada, and he was a damn good fighter, back in his day. So the entire idea of the cross counter is, you're waiting for the opponent to strike, and you're striking them at the exact same time that they're punching you. So you're using the opponent's momentum against them because they're closing the gap as you hit them. And this doubles, the impact of the punch, the force of it. The cross part of it is the attacking arm crosses over the opponent's arm as they're punching, and this gives you more leverage in your punch. So despite the fact that, it's a collision where both fighters are getting hit, the fighter that's taking the cross counter is taking way more overall damage, and that's why, despite the fact that they're both getting hit, the opponent is the one taking the most damage and, getting knocked out from it. Dangpei says that Joe did it almost reflexively. Rikishi knocked him back, and, Joe fell into the ropes and, bounced off of it and then went right into his punch with it. I think Joe did that on a subconscious level even. He wasn't even thinking about it because he had been knocked down so many times. He was really kind of like in and out of it during the entire fight. Now, I think the official scoring is that that's a draw. Both fighters get counted out, even though they didn't get counted out. Dangpei stopped and said, don't even bother. But when Rikishi finally comes to, he flicks a rock at, Joe to hits him in the chest and it wakes him up. And he lets him know, good job, man, you won. So even though technically, this should officially be scored a draw, the fact that Joe is, an untrained amateur boxer against, a professional fighter of Rikishi's class, it really shouldn't have been any contest. Rikishi should have won it outright. But he says that Joe won the fight just because of how he handled himself. He got up 9 times from 9 separate knockdowns. That's huge. And then he hit Rikishi with such a great punch that, his one down was enough to, end the fight. But that wasn't even the coolest part of this episode. Right after, Rikishi and Joe get brought out underneath a tree to get some shade for them to, slowly recover and wake up, all the other inmates in attendance were, so moved by what they saw that they just, clamor, jump inside the boxing ring. They all want to fight. They were so inspired by what they saw. And that was really cool, too, because, everyone in here is, a ruffian, a thug, and, they're not typically people that play by the rules, but in this case, they want what they saw to mean something. And for that to take place, they have to fight under actual rules. And so it was really cool to see how they were policing their own in there. Like the runt of the litter, Oyama, was fighting this really big buffoon guy. And despite the fact that, he was outsized, he was 3.5 times his size easily, the fact that he was actually filled with, courage and inspiration from what he saw led him to fight, better than he otherwise probably would. It also really helped that the big guy was so damn arrogant. So, he got in a really good shot right off the bat that knocked him down. Then he employed Joe's, running strategy, so the guy's, flailing his arms, hitting nothing basically, tiring himself out. This then gives him the chance to, land his own, cross counter. Not really a cross counter, but, same basic principle, just different punch. And he wins the fight, despite the fact that he's outweighed by 100 pounds easy. And, every inmate there was deeply moved by what they saw. A lot of discipline and knowledge and boxing history went into what happened here, and it's kind of really important, and they all take super note of it. And yeah, it inspires them to try it out on their own, and they're willing to follow rules for the first time in their lives, find that meaning for themselves. So it's actually just a really cool and touching scene, honestly. I knew early on watching this that the person that is responsible for its creation had a deep love and knowledge of boxing history. They probably grew up watching fighters like Fighting Harada and, bunch of other Japanese greats back in the day. I know the creator of Hajime no Ippo was into boxing at like a very young age, but he wasn't very good at it. But, he always watched it and kept up with it. And, his passion just as a fan, works its way through his creation in the manga. I can see some inspiration from Ashita no Joe in Hajime no Ippo. They're kind of similar. So yeah, this is another great one of the books. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So as always, thanks for watching and peace.